let's talk about pictures. Let's talk about a symbol for justice that we see in our modern Western English-speaking world, and let's contrast that with a biblical image. So in our modern Western English-speaking world, a common symbol that we have for justice is this picture. It's Lady Justice. She's the Roman goddess of justice, and she's blindfolded, holding scales and a sword. So what this picture represents is that justice is impartial. She's blindfolded, so it doesn't matter who is on the scales of justice. Everybody gets the same treatment, and the scales represent that justice is a mechanical process. It works the same for everybody. And then the sword represents the power of logic and justice and reason. So this picture is great. It's not wrong. It is one of the aspects of justice. It's a great aspect of justice, but it's not the whole picture that we see in biblical justice. So if we take this idea of like, this is what justice looks like, and then we try to see it in the Bible, and then we try to only apply this type of justice in the world, we're going to be really limited. So let's contrast this goddess of justice with a biblical image we see, and that's a picture of a river. So we're going to look at something that God says through the prophet Amos in the book of Amos. So in the book of Amos, just to set this up, in the book of Amos, the prophet is addressing a nation that is doing really terrible things. He says that the nation is crushing the poor and the weak and the needy. There are masters sexually exploiting their servant girls. There are wives manipulating their husbands to do more injustice towards the poor. There's business people that are manipulating God's laws so they can make more profit. It's like a really ugly, bleak, terrible picture. So what's interesting is like in the midst of all of that, Israel still doing great with their religious activities. They're doing all the right things with like their offerings and all of that. And ironically, I think this is something that nations and people still probably do, that they make up for doing a lot of really terrible injustice by becoming more religious. And what I love is when you hear God's voice in the midst of this picture, like this imbalance of injustice paired with really great religious activities. What does God say in the midst of all of that? So I'm going to read out of the book of Amos chapter 5, and we're going to hear what does God say in the midst of this type of a picture, and then what does he say that he wants at the end. And it gives us this symbol for justice and righteousness that I think is super powerful, not only for understanding what justice, the biblical idea of justice is, but also in how do we apply it. So let's read out of Amos 5. This is God speaking. I despise your feasts. I take no delight in your solemn assemblies. Even though you offer your burnt offerings and grain offerings, I will not accept them. And peace offerings of your fattened animals, I will not look at them. Take away from me the noise of your songs and harp. To the melody of your harps, I will not listen. So he's not happy about all of these really great religious activities that Israel's doing. Let's look instead at what he says he does want and what he is looking for. So Amos 5:24, but let justice, mishpat, roll down like waters, and righteousness, tzedakah, like an ever-flowing stream. So in the middle of all of this injustice, he's not looking for more religion, he's looking for justice and righteousness. So let's look more at the Hebrew terms that we see for water, because it's really powerful. So it says, but let mishpat roll down like waters. And what that phrase roll down like water suggests, it's not that water should like trickle down like in a faucet, but that it should be waters that come forcefully and unencumbered, and they're moving freely. So like the picture of a river. So anything that's in the way of this river gets moved to the side. So anything that gets in the way of justice should be moved to the side. So anything that's in the way of healing and transformation and restoration should be moved away because of the power and the force of this justice. And the next part says, and let righteousness, tzedakah, come like an ever-flowing stream. So the word stream in Hebrew, it means something slightly different than we think of stream. It's something that's specific to the geography of Israel. So in Israel, there's these streams that are dry during the dry season, and then they gush during the rainy season. So what God is saying is that he wants righteousness to flow freely and unencumbered even in the dry season. So it doesn't matter what's going on and what the conditions of the world are, but he still wants righteousness to come. So this image that we get for justice and righteousness in the Bible is that righteousness and justice, it's flowing freely, unencumbered, nothing gets in the way, does not change no matter the season. And that's a really powerful image. And I want to read just some commentary that Rabbi Abraham Joseph Heschel has in his book, The Prophets. He does this contrast between the Western image of Lady Justice with her scales and with their river. So let's read what his commentary on this is. He says, a surging movement, a life-bringing substance, a dominant power, a mighty stream expressive of the vehemence of a never-ending, surging, fighting movement, as if obstacles had to be washed away for justice to be done. Justice is more than an ideal or a norm. Justice is charged with the omnipotence of God. What ought to be, shall be. Balancing is possible when scales are unimpaired and the judge's eyes are sound. When eyes are dim and the scales unsure, what is required is a power that will strike and change, heal and restore, like a mighty stream bringing life to a parched land. Righteousness is a vast and mighty stream because God is its unfailing source. So I love this contrast between what we think of as like justice being this like balancing, methodical, impartial, unemotional force with a river. That it's something that can cause change. It's something that is never ending because it's flowing from God. And why is this important? It's first important for understanding biblical justice, but it's also important for applying biblical justice. There's lots of people that feel a call to do justice, but don't feel like they fit the idea of like a scale balancing type of person. They feel called to bring healing and transformation and restoration that's outside of that image. Well, guess what? You have a justice call too. You are called to be part of the river of God, bringing restoration and wholeness wherever there's been injustice and brokenness. So it's important in understanding that. And then it's also important in keeping our hope alive. There's plenty of issues that a scale can't fix. How can a scale fix genocide? How can a scale bring healing and restoration to someone who's experienced trauma? Where is a scale able to be applied there? So my prayer for you in leaving this is that you would start to see biblical justice in how you are called to live it out, so that you're called to be part of a stream. Maybe that looks like you having that idea of like Lady Justice, but maybe it doesn't. Maybe you're called to do something that's more creative. Maybe you're called to do something that's different. So my prayer is that you would see yourself in that you would experience the rivers of justice and righteousness in your own life for yourself. And that you would start to engage in doing this kind of justice, that you would join with the river of God that he's already birthing, the movements that he already has on the earth, that you would join together with other people, and that you wouldn't be hopeless when you see issues that seem really big and overwhelming. God's got a river of justice and righteousness for that.